What's up, everyone? Anthony Dapolito III here, founder and creator of Dream Big & Co. And we have a different format this intro this time around. And it's so right because for this 54th episode, Fidel Boamah is our guest, third time coming. Born and raised in Ghana, West Africa. And it makes so much sense that we're changing this format, we're adding to it. And he was the first person we ever interviewed for our podcast. He was one of the original people that helped grow Dream Big & Co., but is now the creative director of Truck Bux, a creative genius in full, visionary in his own right, has ideas pouring out of his eyeballs, and someone you can always go to for deep insight, great perspective, and we talk about just that on episode number 54. So enjoy this one, and let me know what you think in the comments. Let's get into it.
I have a dream.
It's one small step for man.
I am the greatest.
You want something, go get it. Period.
You said, dreams are the seedlings of reality. So when you showed me that picture of your drawing with sperm eyes, which you can expand on, I thought of that. Like, dreams are the seedlings of reality. They come from nothing, but then they manifest themselves into the world in which they're actualized.
Yeah.
So it's like the sperm it's something, but it's not seen as anything because it's not in reality. Then it forms itself.
Yeah.
And takes its own.
There's another saying. There's another thing I got from Think and Grow Rich. That's from Think and Grow Rich, by the way.
Yeah.
There's another thing that I noted down as I was reading the book. And the author says, life is strange and often imponderable. Both the successes and the failures have their roots in simple experiences. I just find that, it's often the simple things, the things that you would neglect and consider to be invaluable, just really nonchalant. It doesn't really add or take away much, but it's in those things that kingdoms are born and forests are grown. Just from one seed, you could have a forest.
Exactly. Exactly.
Just from one sperm, you could have a family. And it just goes and goes and goes. We live in an infinite universe. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. Everything is on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And the spectrum is endless. It just
endless.
Keeps going,
Yeah. And just to take it back for a second, this is going to be the third time in which we recorded a podcast. And I remember the first one, it was some of the worst audio quality that a podcast could ever have. And we started in really the basis of knowing you and knowing each other. But it's that exact thing. So I'm really glad it was brought up and the podcast was started there because that was a seedling. And it's in and of itself, those episodes were seedlings of what is now coming to be.
Exactly. It's crazy because it's all these podcasts that we have, I don't think it's ever really going to change its kind of format. Or I guess we'll have new topics to talk about, but ultimately I feel it will always be around similar themes of how to continue to grow and how to be more efficient and optimize. I don't think we'll ever run away from such topics of discussion because I feel we as a human race are here to grow, ultimately. Grow for ourselves and for our race, for the whole humanity, because every growth that you make contributes to the overall growth. And think of people like Einstein or Abraham Lincoln.
They're pushing the needle forward.
Exactly.
Yeah. And for all those individuals, it was their ability to stay strong and be courageous because what they were doing was often mocked or they were looked at oddly But if they were born in that next generation, that wouldn't be the case. So it's like, how far are you willing to go outside of the spectrum of what's accepted now in order to push that needle forward, both for yourself, but then for the people that you're never even going to meet in the next generation.
100%. I mean, you're never going to progress if you keep doing the same old things. It's not possible. You have to venture into the unknown. You have to take some risk, you know? It's just the price you have to pay if you really want to grow. And that being said, don't just, take risks, but be more aware of, the experiences you've had and let those things influence your decisions moving forward.
Yeah.
And that way you become a better player at life.
Yeah, and can you expand on that within the context of your life? So like certain experiences you've had since we last talked that are allowing you to be okay with stepping into the unknown?
Oh, 100%. It's like every day it's kind of like a venturing into the unknown for me. I've been exposed to so many new ideas and like perspectives on this life that we're experiencing, and just having that broad, understanding of how so many different people perceive life, and also understanding how connected we all are as a human race. It kind of encourages me to be more of service.
Yeah.
And to actually do what I'm here for, I feel like as much as it may seem selfish at times to say you're only going to focus on yourself and like, so you want to develop these skills and you want to really get a hold of yourself, like you want that self-control where like when you say you're going to do something, you do it.
Yeah, we talk about discipline a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you want that from yourself so that you can also be of service to the world. Because first you have to be that strong, Yeah. If you don't have that stability in yourself, the world is so different, it's like so many different things come at you and you have to be ready. You have to be ready for that, and if you're not, you're going to get hit. So it's like, just gain that confidence in yourself. You have your daily routine, you have your daily habits, just have a solid understanding of how you're moving about in life. That's basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, no matter how slow.
No matter how slow or what happens,
One thing I really came to the conclusion with recently was that one of the greatest things I've done in the past year or two was slow down. And not slow down in terms of taking less action. It's just slow down in let me get my bearings right. Let me actually understand the direction I'm going in, and let me work a little bit smarter based on the new information I've been presented, so I can be better off later on.
Exactly.
So like with all of that, and I know for you as well, I was going to ask, like there's been changes to your ability to have self-control and discipline. Like, was it a change in perspective for you, or was it like constantly not doing it correctly that just were the steps in leading up to you doing something correctly?
I think it's like nothing is in vain. That's what I came to realize. And I'm always realizing that as I'm going forward, because there's very little control that you have over some things, But being able to keep that very positive, optimistic, and I don't mean optimistic as in irrational. I mean optimistic as in I'm not taking no for an answer. And if I really have to go down and get dirty and do this, I'm going to make it happen. One way or the other, I'll figure it out. I'm really not worried about how bad it gets, because I'm not taking no for an answer ever. That kind of optimism.
Yeah.
And it's like, sorry, I think I lost my train of thought.
No, that's basically perseverance in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's perseverance, and it's like the reason I was able to kind of get on this like role of being consistent and really active is I started reading a book, and then I started to put into practice what that book said. And that's not really different from anything I've done. But this time I did it with such consistency and persistence, and really like making it a high priority. Very high priority, making sure that no matter what I'm doing this thing for a long period of time gave me such an incredible boost in terms of understanding who I really am, what I'm capable of, and how to get to this level and stay on this level.
And what was a book?
I read a number of books. So I read What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. And I know it's kind of like a weird title to give a serious book, but it's essentially discussing auto-suggestion. And that's something Napoleon Hill talks about. It's a way of getting control of your subconscious mind. Just like, because when you're born, your subconscious mind is open. At the age of 8 to like, I'll say like 10 or 12, your subconscious mind is wide open. Even more open when you're a child.
It's like most malleable.
Exactly.
Well, it's always malleable, but like unconsciously malleable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're absorbing all this information, building all these mannerisms and habits and whatnot, without you even trying to like filter through what it is you're doing.
Yeah.
And then as you grow older, it kind of gets less and less malleable. And so you're trying to change yourself, but you don't realize why is it why? Because it's like, you say today, I'm taking a step in this direction. And in a week or two, you've completely like gone back to where you started.
Yeah.
And you're like, why? Is it that I don't understand myself? Because I told myself this is what I want to do. The reason behind that is your subconscious mind doesn't know that. So all the habits that you have ingrained in yourself to stop you from breaking past that is still there. So what do you have to do? You have to work on your subconscious mind. As you've built all the bad habits, you've kind of set it up so that you fail. And you have to remove those barriers. Like fear. Fear is a huge barrier that you set in place unconsciously. That's stopping you from really, really chasing your dreams.
Yeah. That's when the problems are being focused on, and if someone gets to the point in which they're focusing on that, the penetration is not deep enough.
Exactly.
So they don't see the reason as to why it's happening. And it's so interesting that was brought up because I've been learning a lot about the microbiome and like the microorganisms within our gut. It's like it's not just the things on the outside that you do, although it comes down to habit and behavior. It's like belief, subconscious, microbiome, like these little things, these tiny things add up, which influence the whole of who you are. And I was going to ask you, like, do you think there's any other pattern for going about life? Because we're at the point now, and you just mentioned it, where you kind of are changing your auto-suggestion, you're reprogramming the way in which you think. Do you think, because we only do that because we have to unlearn what we learned around that 8 to 12-year-old range. Do you think there's like, it can be a different way where like that doesn't have to happen? Or is that just like the archetypal sort of cycle one has to go through in life in order to like actualize their potential and their dreams? Like I was going to say, do you think around 8 or 12 you could be taught what you want to do, or like you can learn the correct things so you don't have to pre-program when you're in your early 20s?
To an extent. You know, there's always going to be some bad programming because everyone is flawed. But you take like, some kids are born into very rich families, and it's also like whatever they do, they don't get broke. You know, it's like no matter how
like
bad,
broke materially.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Like no matter how bad it gets, they're always going to have some wealth. And part of that reason isn't just because part of that reason isn't just because of wait, what am I saying? I think part of that reason isn't just because of the wealth. It's because of everything that is happening in that family and all the habits that they have picked up to build this wealth that is also being rubbed off on them unconsciously.
On the child.
There are very little things that, like, you can go into even like different behaviors of like wealthy people and poor people, or the way they perceive themselves, or if you're around people who always perceive themselves as like excellent and hold themselves to a high standard and like are always learning and growing and they're always kind of celebrating life, it's very positive for them. And being a child, growing up in that family where there's love, there's attention, there's all that, it'll be very difficult for you to be a terrible failure. And that happens on a subconscious level. So it can get that deep.
I was thinking, the one thing I thought of when you were talking about that is safety. Like, there's a veil of safety that a child in that situation has, so they don't know what it's like to not have that safety. Thus, they're not like tested. They're not put in that fire. Where, someone like you were. I don't know how, like, the spectrum in which the status was like in Ghana, but was it underdeveloped? Was it overdeveloped? Like, what kind of situation were you in? Because I feel like you were put in the fire, even like with the physical situation you were put in, and that's why your mind is so primed to like be in the spot it's in, And you like, there's this constant drive behind you because you learn that at such a young age.
Yeah, I think that came along with my amputation because I never wanted to like not be of value. I never wanted to be seen as like useless or like, just because he has on like, he can't do this, he can't do that. That shit was never my shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've always been the kind of guy to go and get it. And so if I'm ever presented with an opportunity or a situation that says like, no, you can't really do it, like, no, bro. That's not me. So I've always been like always looking forward to like building myself and growing and being of value, not just to myself but to my community. I've just always had that behind my head. So
And talking about that, what's been, because the auto suggestion's one, but what's been the new learnings or developments within yourself this year? Because especially in 2020, because this is like the year in which people are really molding themselves, or they have the opportunity to, because they have the space and time, or because they have now the humility in order to have the room to develop further, because there's no blockage, there's no like ego, there's no barrier. So for you, what's been those recent developments that are like most prevalent or most top of mind?
100%. I mean, recently I would say because of quarantine, a lot of us have had the time to just unwind and just kind of like be wondering for a while, just be in that space where, nothing's really happening. You're just kind of there for a while, and that's a way of kind of emptying yourself and freeing yourself of all this like constant movement and stress. And I mean, not always stress, but like your life experience has been so saturated with so many intense and different experiences for a while that you needed that time to kind of like breathe and not do anything for a while, to heal, regenerate, whatever.
It's like a forceful silence. Like it just comes from that, and it like you might even if it's like this break in the world, people still might be running races within their head, Mm-hmm.
and they might stop, but it's like you have the opportunity to take that step back. And that's probably why I said I one of the best things I ever did was slow down, because of this year. It's like I looked at nutrition, I looked at training, I looked at business, I looked at my learning trajectory, my growth, and all those things were great. Some things I was not going in the correct direction. So this was like one of the greatest things that ever happened, because it forced a readjustment. You know, people are thriving, people are not thriving, but internally it's the presenting the choice in which you can change certain things. I feel like everyone has to change something.
Oh yeah.
Not everything's always going to be
Yeah.
great and dandy. You know what I was thinking too, that was put in my perspective the other day, is like no individual has it figured out. You know, someone, if say you look up to Kanye West, like even he does not have it all figured out, and he's kind of figuring out as he goes. So
I was just about to say that it's never going to be a point where everything is settled. Maybe for brief moments of time, or maybe extended moments of time, but you should always expect some imbalance, and your whole experience is so much better when it's balanced. So it's just life is all about balance.
Yeah, can you talk about the paintings you've been putting together, and like how that represents balance?
And that's something that was expressed unconsciously. You know, one of the things that I do as an artist is to kind of allow myself to be guided, and that's like not rejecting any of your ideas, and not like trying to create something that is going to match onto like this really good thing, so you can tell your friends like, hey, check out this thing that I drew. Or like, it's not for ego, it's just an expression. And so when I indulge in stuff like that, that's where I came up with all these like ideas of how like we as a society are all one. And then I got introduced into chakras, because for some weird reason all the colors that I used were representative of the different chakras in the body. And so I was kind of drawn into that, and that took me into this whole like world of supernatural things and like numerology, astrology. It's just a way of understanding why those things are there, and like what role are they playing. You know, is this something that I should be afraid of, or is it something that I should know? And if I'm afraid, why am I afraid? Why am I afraid to explore like the unknown? You know, especially the things that don't make sense within this reality, but are happening behind the scenes. So just having also the courage to explore that, because it's not easy. The kind of things that you find learning all this stuff is not like, it's not a walk in the park. You know, some of it is very harsh and real, and you begin to like question. You know, so it's a journey. And it's like, as you're going through that journey, you are growing, because your understanding of the way things are happening is extended like to a whole nother level, where you are able to make more informed decisions based on what you know.
Yeah. And then it's like the more you take in, that, like you said, your mind expands, but then when you have to creatively express it, whether for you it would be musically, design-wise, artistically, it has to be simplified down to show what it is you're comprehending, but then you're trying to express and show to the world. So the ability to break it down like that requires a lot of mental focus, but it requires you to really truly understand what it is you're trying to express, because you have to break it down into most simple form.
Yeah.
So like the fact that you've been picking up music, do you think all that stuff and like drawing and all this, do you think you're doing it more so because your mind is expanding?
Possibly.
Or is it just like in an ironic synchronization?
I don't know. For me, it's also weird, because it's like it all kind of adds up, in a very weird way. It kind of makes sense to me. The way like I picked up on these little things and the kind of identity I'm crafting for myself weirdly enough fits into this image that I've always kind of wanted to birth. But for some reason, maybe I've been afraid of like what it will actually take to birth that reality, or just like possibly disappointing some people, or...
But expand on that point. I don't want to cut you off, but I love the word identity. It's a very, very good word to use. But what did you mean by, like, in which way would you disappoint others? Would it be through your best interests because you're growing and they're just tailing off because you're growing, or is it because another reason? I would love to hear.
I guess there are many reasons that we could identify, but for me in particular, it would be like, let's take... There are a lot of different things. Or for example, let's take music, for example. Let's say growing up, I've not really been seen to be a musician. Or like I haven't really expressed music in the ways that I'm expressing right now. So perhaps for a lot of people it's new. It's like, where did all this come from? I don't really think this is you. And that could also be my head, like talking to me and telling me like, what are you really doing here? That could be fear speaking to me. But it could also be a real thing. And kind of having to navigate that experience of you second guessing yourself, and also like having other people second guess you, and still be on that journey and find a way to make it work. That whole experience could disappoint some people, but it's also a battle that you have to face if you kind of want to... You said you're interested in exploring this thing, right? So you're giving yourself a chance to really like figure it out. You're just giving yourself an honest chance to jump in, say, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing here, but I want to try something. And then from there, begin to pick up on all these different skills and build yourself and grow. And then you become like whoever you probably intended to be.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that kind of happened when I began to pick up photography, and then I picked up like music just in my room. Like I'll be recording on my iPhone. I just play a beat and then record, and play a beat and then record, and play a beat and then record, and play a beat and then record. Before I realized, I've started getting songs. And I've been building this library of... So right now I know I have a lot of different songs, but I've not still been able to reach the point where I can mix and master and control my sound as best as I want to. So I'm still on that journey. But I've grown from the place of just like recording on a phone to like sharing it with people. And to be even seeing myself as like a musician. That came from nothing. That came from me just listening to other rappers. And now I'm like, can I try? And then I try, it's like, oh, I really want to try. And you keep going and say like, yeah, no, I kind of do this thing. To the point where you say like, I do this. And then you eventually get to the point where you see other people say he does this.
He does this. Yeah, so exactly.
Going.
Well, I was because you're picking up these different skills, and it's all to accumulate into this one thing, like this one direction, this one identity. And is that why you've been molding the identity of just creative genius? Because that's what it is.
That's exactly what it is. So, yeah, you've said it in a nutshell, because creative genius to me is a person who has full control of themselves and are still able to surrender to some absurd idea, to consider like a wide pool of ideas, and to make what people would see as nothing something. Like to really shift their minds and whole like paradigm and help them see it completely differently.
Mhm.
That's a whole
Yeah.
creative genius thing.
I like that play on the words control, because all people want control, but there's that yin yang aspect to the uncontrollable. So you're open to that, like you're letting go. And I think the beauty of being vulnerable allows for this passageway for more creativity to come, because that's that word surrender that you mentioned. That's so spot on,
Exactly.
and it shows through your work.
It does. It does. And look, for me, I'd say I've made a ton of mistakes. I don't
Yeah.
know exactly what I'm doing, and I probably will be getting injured in the process. But you see, it's all part of life. See, you're definitely going to get some injuries. You're going to take some hits. It's just what it is. But are you going to stop
Mm.
after getting those hits? That's the real challenge. That's what separates like good from excellent.
Mm.
Consistency, persistence,
Persistence.
stability,
Mm.
honesty, rhythm. All those things constantly working with everything that you do is at the forefront.
Yeah. Yeah, that repetition and persistence point comes up again.
Yeah, it does.
And
And it's also like it's a balancing act. Everything is happening present continuous. You know, you never get to the point where it's done. It's always being created. That's in
Yeah.
the present.
Yeah, yeah. So that's fluidity, but if there were to be like a cheat sheet of how to have discipline within the balancing act of life, what is stuff you've messed up with that you now are becoming masterful at, that you can list out in that cheat sheet for others?
I would say prioritizing. I don't really mean like prioritize, like say, I'll do this first and I'll do this second. I mean like, by all means necessary, if I don't do this thing first, I'm in serious trouble. I want to do this thing first because it's helping me. I want to do this thing first for myself. So I'm going to make sure that I do this thing first. I feel like
Yeah.
for me, if there's no meaning attached to a task and I can't see myself growing from it, or I can't really hold myself accountable, then it's not a task for me. So everything that I set out to do, I ensure that I'm doing it because I want to do this. I want to learn from it. I want to grow from it. And it will make me a better person. So that's why I want to do it. But everything that I choose to do. And
Yeah.
obviously with some of them I'll make mistakes. With some of them I wouldn't have the right skills. With some of them I'll probably fail. And one day I'll succeed. Or maybe I'll never succeed. But how will I know if I don't try? I've
Yeah.
already failed it.
Yeah.
And
Well-
I like to try like a myriad of things. Because I just have that wide interest. I want to
So
do
yeah, how do you then so prioritization within the context you said, but how do you try many things while also prioritizing? Is it just attaching a meaning within like the trajectory of your overall growth?
I guess that's also a current challenge for me. Because I'm always kind of switching between things. Like, let's say now I'm learning AR development. But recently I was learning like digital marketing. Or then from digital marketing, I'm deep into like graphic design. And I'm also painting. And I'm making music. And I'm recording videos and all that stuff. Some of them happen spontaneously. But for the ones that I keep at a high priority, they happen every day. And they happen because I have kind of set it up in my mind that these are a must happen, no matter what. So they happen. And I trust myself to make it happen. Because I've built that relationship. Yeah, I've looked myself in the mirror. I've said, okay, now I want to be honest with myself. Yeah. I really want to do these things. So let's make it happen. It doesn't matter if I'm tempted. It doesn't matter if today is not like the sun isn't up. Whatever happens, we said we're going to do this. So let's just do it. Let's not lie to ourselves. Let's just do it. And just being real to myself and giving myself a truly honest chance at making something happen is what has kind of brought me to this point. But I'm still giving myself that opportunity to explore unknown things and make mistakes. But have the confidence that you figure it out and you grow.
Yeah. I picked up a couple words. Honesty, courage in a way, but self-awareness was like that's required in order to prioritize. And I thought of the painting in which you drew, and I wish others can see it. But the eyes that have sperm tails, it's like that play on development, but also awareness of yourself, which because I always thought there was an easier way to hone in on yourself instead of all this baggage that comes with fear or judgment from others and all this stuff. I feel as though you laid it out nice, where it's like priorities come from, who do I want to be? What belief do I have in myself? That self-awareness. Because then from there you can cultivate actions based on like the values in which you hold. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's expressed through action. Exactly. That's why like action is the cure-all, as they say. It's
the activator.
It's
what starts the process. It's what keeps the process going. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, like the engine might be spurring, but then like it really starts and the car takes off when action occurs. Yeah. Because like all the thoughts you have can just lead up. That can be the spurring, but then taking off in the car, the engine actually working itself is action. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then I wanted to bring up, as someone constantly developing, you want to learn these new things. The present is always a thing of focus, but are you excited for anything that's going to occur within the following months?
Always.
/ years.
Always. And there are a lot of different things, but I've also learned to keep it on the low and to kind of let the thing happen in the way that it's meant to happen. Because, in the Bible, they talk about how we should it says like, humans make plans and God laughs. Something along
those lines. Yes, people talk about,
Yeah, something along those lines. I'm sorry if I didn't get it right. But the whole idea that I'm pointing at is like, I want this to happen, and I'm figuring out ways to make it happen. Not that it must happen by all means by this one way, and this is what I expect the whole process to be, and so I'm just going to get it. It should be that simple, right? It's never that simple. It's never that simple, and like just understanding that it's never that simple puts you in a better position to persevere and just like accomplish the goal.
That same point of control and accountability, along with being vulnerable and letting go to the unknown, is that same thing that's brought up. It's like you have your own will, but then it's surrendering to God, surrendering to what the universe brings into reality, the problems we have to face, aka even 2020. That's like another wrestling match, or they say tightrope in and of itself. But even that too, it's like is it like, are you just swimming in this river of life? Like, is it, because what if something really, what if something really drastic were to occur and you have to change your direction and focus on that, but that's not in alignment with where the growth in which you want to have or the skills in which you want to acquire? Or will you just use that experience to then mold into this individual?
And it's at that point that you realize that there's more to it than just you. It's not all about you. It's not all about you and your plans and what you want. Because, some of my experiences have been like just realizing that we're all one and that no one really lords over anyone. We're all kind of connected. And like some of the stresses that we have in the world is birthed from this idea that I kind of have more value than another person. And that just creates like unnecessary tension, and it creates a lot of destruction and that bad stuff.
Yeah, the control and the power is that what derives from.
Exactly. And it also goes to this idea of like playing your role. And because life is all about balance, it just happens that you want to go in this direction, but everything else is going in the other direction. And sometimes you can't do anything about that. You're going to be affected. And so you would have to make decisions. For example, I lost my leg when I was 6 years old, right? Maybe there are some situations where you can adapt and make it work for you. Maybe there are situations where you can't adapt and you have to find a whole different route. So you do what you can, And you trust that you take a very honest decision with yourself. And you say to yourself, I'm going to make it work. Or, I know I've given myself a solid chance at this. I think it's time I try something new. And then you try that thing. Without any guilt or any,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Without any guilt.
Yep.
Without any guilt. And I want to make it like digestible for those who don't understand seeing yourself in others, or knowing that you're connected to every single person. Walking around on the street and seeing someone on their stoop and saying, wow, they're a part of me. Like for those who don't really, when they hear that, they're like, what are you talking about? Like, what's a comprehensible, digestible, snack-sized bit in which you can present it to them?
It's just, you have to eliminate your pride and like remove some parts of your ego. Because some people will never see it if their ego is always big and loud and taking center stage. I guess it's not possible for those people because you just can't get to them. When you surrender your ego, you're not saying like, I'm not a human being and I don't deserve to be here and that I'm a slave to everyone else. That's not what you're doing. You're realizing that even though you are your own self and you lord over your body and your actions and your decisions, you're also a part of a whole community of people that is influencing the life that you are kind of having right now. That this life you're having wouldn't even really exist if they weren't here. So you respect them. You respect them. You respect them. And if any of them need help, you try and help them. You show love. You share jokes. It's not that this person is more important than me. I'm jealous of this person. I wish I had what they had. It's just like, oh, you're just like me. Oh, good to see you, man. How's everything? Great, thank you. That's really what it is. You surrendered your ego. It's one of the greatest things that could happen to you.
Yeah, and then you think of it's like how does someone get to the point in which they hurt another individual? And then you do all this thinking, you do all this questioning, you go through all these problems that you probably didn't need to get to the point to say, oh, they just didn't like themselves. You know, they just hated themselves. So all of that to be said, that this expression, this life is a creative expression of ourself.
Oh yeah.
And when you do something to harm others, you actually are doing something to show zero respect to yourself and hurt yourself. And it's when you conclude that aspect of being connected to others that that you can see that that's the case. And I feel as though that's beautiful because you got to that point, and now you're acting in this newfound way, because it wasn't always like that. Like you there was times you didn't have boundaries. There was times when you didn't respect yourself or have discipline. There was times when you would burn out. And we talked about that last episode. But now this surrendering to the universe, seeing the bigger picture, dreams not being just all about you, but then controlling the present in your everyday, has gotten you to
this
a
kind
better
of
place.
Stage, yeah. And it's just this stage for now, you know. More experiences are going to happen, and I'm going to grow from those. I'll probably get better at things that I started way back and be happy about like my progress. But it's never going to end. I'm never going to be at the point where like I have no issues. I don't even consider them like problems, just like key situations.
Yeah.
I'm always going to have things that happen, and I'll have to deal with them. And I'll learn how to deal with them the older I get. I'll be better at dealing with them. Yeah. And now I will give myself the chance to experience new things and to grow and to learn and to continue to build like my identity. So yeah.
I was gonna say the growth is there. It's pretty damn evident. But it's beautiful to see.
Exactly. I see the same growth in you, man. It's everywhere. That's the beauty of it, you know.
It's everywhere for sure.
Yeah, it's everywhere. You see it in everyone.
Yeah, and just to talk about some more tangible things, real quick. What are some current roles in which you continue to express yourself? You know, you got creative director at Truck Bux. You got made a T-shirt recently in which sold out. Like, what are some of these more tangible things that you have, except for just skill acquisition, like on a self-development level and personal things? And then I would love to venture down that for a second.
I would say position-wise, just creative director at TruckBux and just creative genius. I take those two things as kind of like roles. You know, at TruckBux, I need to make sure that we are meeting a certain standard. That's just like my job, you know. At Creative Genius is like my life, you know. That's what my life is centered around, being a creative genius, which, like I said, means being in control of myself, but also also being able to surrender to new ideas just to learn and grow, you know. So not saying like, oh, I'm so in control of myself, I can do anything. It's more like I'm in control of myself, so I'm allowing myself to experience new things and to learn from them and grow from them, and also like serve my community.
Yeah, it's like how the warrior grows tougher. It's like you go into new terrains with the sword that you've been sharpening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, at first there was a time where I was afraid to go into new terrains, you know. But now I'm excited to. Like, I want to do more of that. I want to find out stuff that I don't know, or like being in situations where like I'm tense and I'm trying to figure it out, and I want that to happen because I grow from that, and the more I do that, the better I get. Put myself under like not stressful conditions, but like I like to hold myself accountable to a good standard. Say like, oh, did I do that? I did that. That's me. That's me and Fidel. Nobody else has that with myself. So I trust myself. I like myself. I do stuff for myself. At the same time, I do stuff for people because I realize in doing for me, it's only to serve them. We're all in service to each other. We're all one.
Yeah.
So that's the whole like idea behind being a creative genius and growing and exploring, and that's the basis of it. I don't want to say like I want to have this like particular company and then I want to do these things to help my community, because maybe those are all like just my ideas and what I want to give to the world, right? But what does the world really need? It's not just what I want to give it. What does it need, right? And how can I be rendering service to help that need be realized? Just like explore things, build your skills, and then let life kind of guide you towards things that need service. And you just grow from that. If you get to the point where you realize having a company would help you do that, then it becomes very reasonable that you do that, But to kind of just say like I wanna do this, it's like
the meaning to it. It's more potent with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And someone brought up a great question the other day, a friend of mine, and he said, does growth precede change, or does change precede growth? And I thought it was one of the deepest questions ever got asked, and I don't even think there can be an answer because they're kind of both intertwined. Because a lot of what we discussed is change, the uncontrollable, but then from that is growth. You're on the edge of discomfort, which going to that new terrain causes growth. So like, might not be answerable, but what do you see? What do you see precedes which?
It's the same thing.
Same thing? Yeah.
One can't happen with the other. They can't trip on each other.
The chicken or the egg.
Yeah, and you can't really,
Yeah.
It's one. You can't grow if you're not changing. You can't change if you're not growing. Maybe in different directions. You could grow bad, just like you could grow good. You're always kind of
it's what
growing.
we discussed before.
And that's like the balance. Yeah, there's an infinite, spectrum, and so there are obviously like two very drastic extremes. And a lot of times we're hovering, between those extremes, a further on one side than the other, But it's not really about being on the most positive or being on the most negative, It's about realizing that, both of these two things exist. And as a human being, you're going to experience negatives and positives, right? It's going to happen, whether you like it or not. There'll be some days you feel great, and there'll be some days you feel like shit. You're going to experience both of them, right? It's all a balancing act. To say like, okay, fine, I know I failed here, and I'll succeed over there. I succeeded here. And I failed over here. Those are fine. You have to experience both. It's just like, I'm also not saying don't be a huge success, because it just means that you're playing at a higher level of balance.
The same thing, it's just a higher level, higher frequency.
Very successful people also have very negative experiences, very serious challenges that you don't have yet because you're not playing at that level yet,
But I want you to really deepen that thought, because people talk about patience, but the way in which that can be presented right now can be really strong. Because it's like just trusting the process in which you're developing, but knowing that the field in which you're playing in is the same as someone else who's higher than you. It just might be a little bigger for them. You know what I mean? There's more pressure because they know what it takes. They know what needs to happen in order to play at that level.
And you see, like, patience is a huge part of that. Like, imagine not being patient, bro. Like, it's very simple, you know. Like, once you really get it, you get it. But whenever you imagine something or you want something to happen for you, you kind of have the thoughts in your head, right? And the more you kind of play around with that thought and begin to, like, bring it out into your reality, that's basically manifestation. It's like, I want to be better, right? So I'm holding myself accountable. And I'm seeing myself do these things because I'm holding myself to a standard. It's like, I'm going to do those push-ups. I can imagine myself doing those push-ups. I can literally feel myself, like, when I close my eyes, I think of what does it really take to do a push-up and try and feel that. And then before I realize, I find myself doing the push-ups. And am I thinking about the time it will take for me to feel the push-ups and then do the push-ups? No, not really. It just kind of happens, you know. It's in my head, like, oh, I'm going to the grocery store. I kind of just, like, imagine that whole thing. Me immediately being in the store, picking up what I need, and it's just like a flash, boom.
Yeah.
And when I'm going, you know. But you kind of thought that before it happened. So it's like, some of the things that you think about, it will happen. But are you patient enough? You know, are you thinking about how long? That's not really.
It can happen. It can happen quick in your head and in your dreams, but the way in which it's presented to the world takes time because there's so many moving players.
Takes time. So many moving players. So many different factors. But that's not something you should worry about. All you should worry about is bringing it out,
and not even worry about. Just focused on.
Yeah, just focus on what you want.
Exactly.
And it will kind of, you know.
I really want to get even deeper and talk about dreams, because not just dreams in which you want the desires you want to fulfill as goals, but dreams because those are like premeditated thoughts that can be brought out through your creative expression, through your living. And as you get, like you, Fidel, get to know yourself more and more, dreams can be that unconscious pillar that influence your actions. So, like, in which way are you, I wouldn't say tapping into, but understanding those premeditated thoughts and the dreams in which you have to help guide you or help understand yourself a little bit
I see what you mean. Well, I would say when it comes to dreams,
because that's surrendering to that unknown.
Yeah, it's kind of like being guided, you know. It's
guided,
like,
yeah.
You're being given a sign, and the truth is, like, we're always being given signs. When I like started understanding numerology, and how if you see like 444 or 333 means something, those are all signs that, like, the universe. You know, some people say universe or God. God actually gives these signs. What's up, bro? Those are some signs that the universe will give, and it's like you take them and you realize that, okay, so it's happening. In a way, you're not sure how, but you have faith that this is a good sign. I trust it, and then you run.
Yeah, it goes back to that model of controllability, but then letting go and letting the signs guide you as though it were a rock in a river and you're bouncing off of it.
I mean, bro, there was a time where I used to have these signs and good things would just happen like back to back to back.
Yeah.
I see the sign, immediately I see it, it's realized. You know? It's
it's realized, and it's also realized, and it might not happen until a little bit later.
Yeah, some of them are immediate.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like when you reach that level and you're like really honest with yourself and true to yourself, and you're hitting all the targets. You know, you're respecting yourself. You're doing what you're supposed to do. you know, it works. It's magical.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's pretty damn insane
Yeah.
that life could be that good possibly.
Yeah.
It's crazy. With very little and just like you being real with yourself.
But overall, there was a main theme talked about, and nonetheless, I appreciate Fidel Boamah growing into his own, spreading his own insights from his own life on this episode, and being the creative genius he is, expressing himself authentically.
Thank you so much, Anthony. You know, it's always an honor, you know, talking and sharing our experiences. And I just want to say that, you know, we should just look forward to keeping our lives balanced. You know, I think at the very least, setting that target that I'm going to hover between pleasure and pain. And I'm going to accept that as a reality. I'm not going to run away from things that hurt me. But neither will I run away from things that please me. And I'll make it a point to have a fair share. You know? So just do the hard work when it has to be done. Enjoy yourself when you have to. You know? That's pretty much it. That's what I'll see in the end.